Discover the amazing journey of a mute boy saved by a black man, a touching twist 10 years later. In the dim light of the local middle school hallway, Charlie felt the weight of being invisible linger heavily around him. At 12 years old, he had mastered the art of silence, but today was a day even the shadows couldn't protect him. Each footfall echoed with taunts, words he couldn't speak back to. A group of boys formed a barrier, smirking and calling him dumb, their laughter slicing through the air like a knife. Charlie's heart raced, panic welled up as his breath became shallow. He couldn't fight back, couldn't express the fear and rage swirling inside him. Just when despair was about to swallow him whole, a body surged between him and his tormentors. The face belonged to Marcus, the handyman whose presence was a balm to Charlie's wounded spirit. "Back off," Marcus said, a commanding deepness to his voice that silenced the laughter. The boys hesitated, then recoiled as if stung. Charlie's shoulders relaxed slightly, yet the threat still felt palpable. He was reminded of the shadows he'd grown accustomed to. Was it possible to step into the light? The kindness in Marcus's gaze felt like a lifeline thrown to a drowning boy. For the first time, Charlie felt hope peeking through the darkness. Days turned into months, and under Marcus's gentle guidance, Charlie discovered the joys of woodworking. Piece by piece, he molded beauty from raw lumber, shaping the world around him and building something tangible. It filled a void that echoed from his silence, a chance to speak through his hands. Yet as the skill flourished, so did Charlie's anxiety. Was it enough to be more than just a mute boy stuck in a small town? He weighed the burden of his humble roots, the shame that whispered he would forever be defined by his upbringing and not by his talent. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Fast forward 10 years and Charlie excelled as a carpenter, yet the pressure weighed heavier than ever. Crafting remarkable pieces brought him recognition, but the shadows of doubt still loomed. As he prepared for his first spoken-word performance, a voice quaked inside him. What if they only saw the boy he used to be, not the man he had become? A rush of conflicting emotions surged through him, each pulse thrumming with rage and yearning for validation. He feared that no amount of talent could erase the ghosts of self-doubt, of knowing that society often only saw the boy who couldn't utter a word. Then, just as he began to find his footing in the local art scene, a bombshell shattered his world. Marcus, the man who had lifted him from that dark alley of despair, was actually his biological uncle. A tidal wave of confusion crashed over Charlie. Would that revelation rewrite everything they'd built? The safe haven Marcus provided now felt threatened by the weight of family secrets. Charlie stood paralyzed, facing the very person who shaped him, heart racing, wrestling with feelings of betrayal that threatened to drown out the healing they'd found in each other. As he confronted Marcus, the tension in the room crackled like a live wire. The air thickened with unspoken words and memories that could either fortify or fracture their bond forever. Charlie's breath hitched, struggling between the connected love they'd shared and the uncertainty of their fractured identities. Would the truth be the anchor that held them down, or the key that set them free? The shadows loomed closer, and the echoes of unanswered questions rattled in his mind, leaving Charlie teetering on the edge of a heart-wrenching reality. What happens when the person who saved you has always been a part of the darkness? The air hung heavy between them, a palpable collision of emotions. Charlie's heart raced, his mind spiraling through a kaleidoscope of memories and fears. Questions surged through him like a tidal wave. How did he not know?
What did this mean for them? Did the years spent crafting their bond mean nothing in the face of blood ties? The revelation echoed in his mind, consuming the quiet confidence he had begun to cultivate in his woodworking and spoken word. "Charlie, listen," Marcus began, his voice calmer but still thick with emotion. "I never wanted to keep this from you. I hoped, it wouldn't matter. You've built yourself into more than just a mute boy. You're an artist. Aren't I just a project to you?" Charlie interrupted, the weight of betrayal snapping. "Was everything a lie? Did you save me from those boys in that alley just to bring me here?" Each word felt like a jagged piece of glass lodged in his throat. Marcus's face fell. The frustration, mixed with hurt, mirrored Charlie's own internal tumult. "It's not like that, Charlie. You're so much more than a project. You were family before we found each other again. I didn't raise you by the blood in you, but by the love in my heart." Their shared history felt like a delicate sculpture, too fragile to withstand the onslaught of truth. Charlie, though, grappled with an innate need to protect himself more than anything else, often forsaking vulnerability for walls fortified by silence. As the silence stretched between them, Charlie's gaze dropped to the floor, his sanctuary of carpentry. The chisel marks on the wooden floor felt like scars
Of his own journey, every indention telling a story of triumph over pain. What would happen now? How could he forge a path forward amidst the confusion of kinship and the ghosts of his past? That night, sleep escaped him. Instead, he found himself in his workshop, the scent of sawdust enveloping him like a warm embrace. The tools lined the walls, reminders of both his struggles and triumphs. Each piece he crafted told a story, a narrative of perseverance that had carried him from the shadows. But now, facing the uncertainty of his relationship with Marcus, doubts resurfaced. Would he always be defined by this silence, or could he find a way to wield his voice, however unorthodox, in the face of a tainted bond? After hours of contemplation, he reached for a humble piece of wood, grappling with the thought of crafting something that married both of his worlds, the silence of his birthright and the artistry of his evolution. As he began shaping the wood, a vision crystallized. He would create a unique piece that embodied the juxtaposition of his journey. It would be a reflection of his struggles and a proclamation of independence. He envisioned a sculpture, bold yet understated, as intricate as the man it would confront and as raw as his own emotions. Each chisel stroke marked a declaration without words, confronting not only Marcus, but the very essence of his own identity. Could he blend the past with the future in a form that spoke louder than sound itself? Armed with new resolve, Charlie aimed to finish this piece before confronting Marcus again. It would be a means of communication that didn't require sound, but rather an invitation to connect through creation. The weight of the unfinished sculpture stood as a metaphor for his own journey, layered, complicated, yet ultimately beautiful. The world saw him as a mute boy bound by silence, but he was now ready to challenge that perception head-on. As the sun rose the following morning, casting light through the workshop windows, Charlie's breath caught. The final product glistened with potential, a bridge to healing his fractured identity. He took a step back, studying the sculpture, and felt the tremors of a steeled resolve settle in his chest for what was to come. No longer just the boy bound to silence, but a man on the brink of confrontation and reconciliation. It was time to face Marcus, time to unveil the truth layered within wood, and perhaps time to discover if this new bond could withstand the weight of family secrets. Would the act of creation become the key to unlocking their relationship, or merely a prelude to deeper conflict? The urgency whispered in the air, and Charlie knew the moment was near. Standing in the gentle morning light, Charlie's heart pounded with a ferocity that echoed through the stillness of the workshop. Each breath felt electrified with anticipation and fear, as if he were about to pivot on a precipice, edging closer to a destiny he both longed for and dreaded. His sculpture,
His voice loomed in front of him, a tangible representation of his internal struggle, speaking volumes where words failed. He inhaled deeply, letting the familiar scent of wood and varnish anchor him. The realization of what he held in his hands was weighty. It was not just another piece of his collection, but a critical manifesto of all he had endured, transformed into artistry. It was time to wield his creation as a shield against misunderstanding, and a sword that could cut through the thick veil of uncertainty surrounding his relationship with Marcus. Charlie recalled their shared laughter, late-night conversations, and how Marcus had pulled him from darkness into new light. Yet now, all those memories felt like echoes of a distant past, marred by the revelation of their blood ties. Family could mean hurt. It could mean a betrayal of the heart that felt deeper than any silence he had battled for years. A turbulent whirlpool of emotions raged within him, threatening to drown out the steely resolve he had just begun to build. Each step toward the door felt monumental, a declaration of intent. He hesitated, glancing back at his sculpture one last time. This was about more than just confronting Marcus. It was about embracing who he had become, an artist, a survivor, and now a seeker of truth. The time had come to confront the uncomfortable realities that had loomed between them like shadows. Outside, the morning gradually came alive, contrasting with the brewing storm within. The path to Marcus's room felt endless, each footfall echoing the fears that flitted through his mind. What would he say? Would the sculpture serve as a bridge, or would it become yet another barricade? Finally, he reached the door. Uncertainty gripped him, squeezing tightly like an iron vise. With a resolute exhale, Charlie raised his hand, hesitating just for a moment before knocking. Solid, deliberate, infused with the very essence of his being. There was no turning back now. He needed to pave a new way for their relationship, or risk losing it altogether. The soft sound of footsteps approached from within, and time slowed as he felt the rush of adrenaline surge through him. His resolve solidified. He had crafted not only a physical piece of art, but also a pathway to unearth the deepest corners of their shared experience. Marcus opened the door, eyes widening, the mixture of surprise and anticipation crossing his face. Charlie stepped forward, holding the sculpture between them like a delicate offering, ready to pour out the sentiments he could no longer keep trapped within his heart. "Charlie?" The tremor in Marcus's voice resonated with the weight of their unresolved tension. "What is this?" The moment hung heavy in the air, a crucible of unformed words and unexpressed feelings. Charlie took a deep breath, preparing to reveal not just the sculpture, but to unveil the depths of his heart. It's time, he thought. This wouldn't just be about family. Secrets. It would be about forging a new identity, grappling with vulnerability in their fragile bond. The air crackled with expectation, and as he opened his mouth to speak, he felt an invigorating rush of authenticity surge through him. But just as the words began to surface, a sudden sound erupted from the distance, a harsh noise that sliced through the ambiance, forcing Charlie to falter. He turned, the uncertainty creeping back in. What was that? Was there more waiting for them outside the sphere of their confrontation? Something that could potentially derail the hard-won connection he sought? The foundation he had begun to lay felt suddenly at risk, and as he looked back at Marcus, who mirrored his confusion, an unsettling question lingered in the air. What unseen forces lurked in the depths, ready to topple their fragile reconciliation? Charlie felt the warmth of the morning sun seep through the door as he shifted his focus back to Marcus. The moment was taut with tension, but the sudden noise loomed larger than his fears. He could sense the clock turning as uncertainty hung in the air, tales of doubt intertwining. "Charlie?" Marcus's voice pulled him from his thoughts. The worry etched in his brow catapulted and summoned Charlie's hidden courage. This wasn't just about their past. A revelation had dawned in his mind, an understanding that would reshape their future, even amid the chaos. Charlie stuttered, his voice trying to align with his will. The fierce longing to communicate unchained a mix of emotions inside him, but the noise outside seemed to resonate with his hesitation. Taking a risk, he surged ahead with intensity. "We need to talk about what just happened, about us." Marcus glanced over his shoulder, caught between concern for the noise and the moment growing fragile before him. "What do you mean?" His gaze shifted back to the sculpture, a question brimming in his expression. Charlie stepped closer, feeling the sculpture's weight pressing against his chest. "This isn't just a piece of art. It's my reflection, my struggle, and who we are now. We can't allow the past to define us. I need you to see it." The implications of his words seemed to weigh heavily upon Marcus, who struggled to process the depth of what Charlie was offering. The underlying shadows of their shared history danced around them, fanning expectations and fears like embers in a hearth. Then the noise struck again, clearer this time. A clamoring, desperate sound that washed over the room seemed to draw Marcus's attention, pulling him back to reality. Charlie felt the fragile connection between them fraying. "I need you to focus on me," Charlie said, trying to draw Marcus back into the moment. With a steadying breath, he continued, "What we are facing now, this noise, this tension, it can't overshadow the part of you that helped save me from my own demons." "Charlie, wait," Marcus began. Yet there was something resolute in Charlie's demeanor that quieted him, the intensity palpable. "This sculpture
embodies my truth. I don't want it to be another barricade." Charlie's voice was gaining strength, asserting a new direction. "What I've created speaks to everything we've been through. If we confront this together, maybe we can redefine us, instead of letting our history define us." "Define us?" Marcus echoed, slowly comprehending the weight of the words. The uncertainty lingered, but the flicker of understanding ignited a stirring between them. "I know this is heavy," Charlie said, the tremor in his voice stabilizing. "But my silence surrounding our complicated truth has to shift. This sculpture, my art, is my truth, and so is our relationship. We can't ignore the bonds that tie us." "The bonds," Marcus echoed, slowly comprehending the weight of the words. The uncertainty lingered, but the flicker of understanding ignited a stirring between them. "I know this is heavy," Charlie said, the tremor in his voice stabilizing. "But my silence surrounding our complicated truth has to shift. This sculpture, my art, is my truth, and so is our relationship. We can't ignore the bonds that tie us." The words hung heavily, a mix of vulnerability and sincerity. They were caught in a tempest of emotions and logical barriers, and Marcus's gaze softened as the weight of their shared fate began to register. Then, just as a fragile calm settled, the chaos erupted once more. A voice calling from outside, someone demanding attention. The sharp intensity shattered the moment. "Charlie!" the voice cried, startling them both. The need for resolution seemed to teeter on the edge of disaster, colliding violently with the lingering truths they harbored. "What was that?" Marcus asked, torn between confronting the distractions and confronting the man standing in front of him. "More than just noise," Charlie replied, his heart quickening. "It's a reminder that we cannot let outside forces disrupt what we're trying to discover together. But it's our chance to enhance our connection too. Could they manage this collision well enough to confront their truths, or would the discord prove too powerful? Charlie felt both fear and a flicker of hope as he prepared himself for whatever lay ahead, knowing they needed to move past the turmoil surrounding them. As uncertainty resonated between them, one last question lingered in the air. Would they have the courage to walk through this together, or would they allow the noise to drown the whispers of their healing hearts? The clamor outside pierced Charlie's concentration, the echoes of his heartbeats morphing into a chaotic rhythm. It was as if the world outside had conspired to dismantle the fragile resolution he had built within the confines of his own wavering spirit. The moment hung in a balance, teetering between breakthrough and retreat. Instinctively, Charlie took a step back, grappling with the fierce urge to forge ahead. What a profound irony it was! He had spent years ensconced in silence,
Yet when faced with the opportunity for honest dialogue, his voice felt lost amid the din. "Charlie," Marcus's voice broke through again, steady yet fraught with concern. "Maybe we should check what's going on outside. It could be important." His eyebrows knitted together, torn between loyalty to Charlie and an instinctual drive to confront the external noise. "No," Charlie said sharply, the word escaping with unexpected force. He immediately regretted the harshness, watching as Marcus flinched. Vulnerability washed back over him like a tide, urging more softness. I need this moment with you, without the noise." The intensity in Charlie's gaze bore into Marcus, and for a fleeting second, he could feel the air shift. It was as if the lingering past, the years of silence, interspersed with moments of painful honesty, was being confronted head-on. In that gaze, the trembling walls of his resolve began to crack, exposing the tender core of his fear and hope. "Then talk to me," Marcus urged, deepening the breadth of his focus. He stepped closer, the distance shrinking, the noise outside fading into an indistinct background hum. "What do you really want to say?" Charlie inhaled a calming breath. The weight of the sculpture at his side felt both comforting and daunting. His hands trembled as he brushed his fingers across its smooth surface, feeling the warmth of the clay still present from his labor. It was an extension of himself, each curve and jagged line resonating with his essence. "I want you to understand the transformation that this, us, represents." Charlie's voice held a gravity that squeezed Marcus's pulse. "I've held on to my past for too long. It's become inscribed in my identity. I need to believe in a different path for both of us. I don't want to feel like a ghost tied to the remnants of what we once were. We can breathe new life into this mess together." The sincerity in his words ignited a wave of something profound within Marcus, igniting a spark of realization. They were standing at a precipice, not of despair, but of potential renewal. "You think we can shift the narrative? Rebuild from our wreckage?" "Yes," Charlie said, the tremor in his tone fading as determination took hold. "But we have to combat it together. I need your courage, your strength, just as much as you might need mine." Duration spun thick around them, colors of their connection swirling with newfound brilliance. Marcus nodded, understanding unfurling like the wings of a bird in flight. "I thought moving ahead meant abandoning what we shared. I didn't realize that it could instead become a foundation," Charlie offered, his heart racing. "Yes, our past was never an anchor. We can make it a vessel for something extraordinary. But I need you to trust that. Can you?" The outside clamor rose again, cracking their moment like fragile glass. But in that instant, Charlie wrestled with a newfound sense of responsibility, not only for himself, but for the relationship that hung delicately between them. "I can," Marcus whispered, the commitment sliding past the walls of apprehension. "But we have to be willing to face anything that might come at us, together." Assured determination replaced uncertainty, but a lingering question still lay thick in the air. What adversities would they face as they stepped into this new chapter? Would the echoes from their past and voices from the outside threaten to engulf them? Or would they emerge stronger, having sculpted a new narrative from the chaos surrounding them? Could resilience be enough to reshape their destinies? Or would the strides they aimed for prove insufficient against an unexpected tide of challenge? Charlie stood there, the weight of Marcus's agreement settling heavily on his chest. They had taken a critical step into uncharted territory, a declaration of partnership blossoming between them. Yet he couldn't shake the uncertainty lingering just beneath the surface. His past was a specter that flickered at the corners of his mind, a constant reminder of fear and regret. "Let's work on it," he suggested, his voice quieter now, almost tentative. "Let's create something tangible from all this." A sense of purpose began to fill the hollow spaces where doubt had resided, and Charlie gestured to the sculpted figure beside him. This, for example, it's not complete yet. It's still just a form waiting to be shaped. Then what do we do next? Marcus asked, his tone lifting subtly, a reflection of Charlie's growing energy. The question rippled through Charlie, opening a new doorway in his thoughts. He had often viewed his art as a solitary endeavor, a pursuit that resulted in raw, unfiltered expressions of himself. But now, the notion of collaboration sparked distinct excitement. The image of a future where they could blend their individual journeys into something wholly new ignited his imagination. When I sculpt, I feel like I'm battling against the clay's resistance, wrestling to bring out what lies within. It's messy, he gestured to the remnants of other projects scattered around the workshop. But every flaw holds potential. We can approach our relationship the same way. Instead of hiding from the imperfections, we can shape them together. Like flaws become features? Marcus mused, leaning forward as if drawn to the idea. How do we start? I think we should start with communication, Charlie said, a resolute tone resonating in his chest. Honesty, even about the uncomfortable truths. We need to lay bare our fears alongside our hopes. Marcus's expression shifted, a mixture of intrigue and hesitation washing over him. And what if our truths clash? Then we face it, Charlie responded, resolute. With care and understanding, we work through it. No more running from what could fracture us. Instead, we press into it, like we'd work the stubborn clay, molding it instead of letting it harden into something unyielding. As Charlie spoke, he felt emboldened, each word peeling back layers of self-doubt. Communication had always been daunting for him, one of the hardest hurdles he faced in presenting himself authentically. Yet here he was, not only expressing a desire for openness, but also believing that it was achievable. Okay, Marcus said, his eyes lit with an eagerness Charlie hadn't seen in a while. I'll share my fears first. I've always feared losing you, but I've realized holding on too tightly might suffocate what's left. The frankness of Marcus's words struck Charlie as profoundly disarming. It was a gift to hear such vulnerability offered so openly, shattering the fragile complacency that they had held on to for so long. I fear rejection, Charlie admitted, the admission radiating solemnity. What if I reveal parts of myself that are unlovable? A pained expression crossed Marcus's face. You will never be unlovable. I want to embrace all of you. Charlie felt a rush of warmth spread through his body, the connection solidifying around them, for the first time grounding him. Their past may be woven with threads of difficulty, but clarity began to emerge, mapping out a path he had only dared to dream of before. Yet, an unsettling realization lingered in the air. The world outside persisted in its clamor, echoing not just through the walls of the workshop, but also in the recesses of Charlie's mind. This burgeoning strength felt electrifying, but what awaited them when they ventured beyond this cocoon? The potential for judgment loomed, and with it, the risk of slipping back into solitude. As the weight of that reality set in, Charlie wondered if they truly possessed the capacity to navigate the challenges ahead, to mold the narrative into one of acceptance and growth. Could they breach the formidable wall of the outside world and turn back to the turmoil they had emerged from? Or would this newfound alliance shatter under the strain of expectations? One certainty burned within him, something that had never resonated before. This was just the beginning of a journey riddled with uncertainties, yet brimming with potential. Suddenly, the chaos outside roared to a crescendo, the noise piercing through the veil of their discussion. And for the first time, Charlie felt armed with the understanding that it was not just about confronting the commotion outside, but also about embracing the unraveling within. Would they be strong enough to confront both? He could only guess, and he found himself fervently looking forward to the next step. Charlie observed Marcus as they both sat in the workshop, the flicker of hope intertwining with the shadows of doubt in the air. They had just opened a door to a new chapter, shedding uncomfortable truths and glimpsing the potential for something greater. But as flickering daylight crept through the windows, it highlighted the mess within, the projects abandoned, the remnants of past failures. "Let's put our fears into action," Charlie proposed, the determination rising in him. "Why don't we create something together first, something that embodies our fears, but also the beauty in facing them?" The idea struck him with a sense of urgency, connecting them in pursuit rather than simply contemplation. "Collaborative art?" Marcus raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "That's precisely the point." Charlie's pulse quickened. "It's a leap into the unknown, just like what we're trying to do with each other. But imagine sculpting something that speaks to both of our experiences, raw and unfiltered. It could be our visual testament." Marcus nodded, the wheels turning in his mind. "What did you have in mind?" "Let's build a sculpture that incorporates elements we both contribute, each section representing our individual fears,
Our shared vulnerabilities, and ultimately the hope that emerges from embracing them," Charlie suggested passionately, clarity emerging in tandem with the idea. "Like a puzzle?" Marcus's eyes sparkled with excitement, enthusiasm igniting. "Each piece is unique but fits together to create something whole. I love that." With newfound energy, they gathered materials scattered throughout the workshop: clay, wood, and metal. As they crafted together, hands intertwined with purpose, Charlie found an unexpected thrill in collaboration. It banished the solitude that had long accompanied his creative impulses. Yet, even as they fused their ideas, Charlie felt the weight of his limitations loom. Would he be able to voice his ideas clearly? Would Marcus's contributions drown out his own? "Let's use those fears as our guiding forces," Marcus said, breaking Charlie's internal disarray. "What if we start by discussing what each of us wants to convey?" Charlie took a deep breath, tackling the unfamiliar territory of vulnerability once again. "I want to show the beauty in imperfection," he said, his voice steadying. "Each flaw represents a story, a part of me that struggled but also led to growth." Marcus reflected for a moment. "I want to express the fear of losing connection, the dread of keeping things too close to the chest without allowing the space for open dialogue." Charlie nodded, realizing how each piece contributed an essential insight to the larger narrative. Together they began sculpting, merging textures, contrasting colors, and forming shapes that spilled forth from their conversations. As the sculpture took shape, an unshakable bond forged between them. But doubts surfaced, crashing against the security they had created. What if they failed to communicate beyond the workshop? What if an audience misinterpreted their work? Would they ever be understood? As the sun dipped below the horizon, its final light casting a golden hue over their creation, Charlie felt the weight of these questions. It shadowed their craft with uncertainty, but also tethered him closer to Marcus. Together they had breached the wall of their individual fears, yet a greater challenge loomed ahead: the outside world and their unyielding judgment. "Tomorrow, let's invite some friends over to see it," Marcus suggested, enthusiasm still present but tinged with apprehension. Charlie's heart sank momentarily at the thought of outside scrutiny. What if they don't get it? What if we're ripped apart by criticism? Marcus took a step closer, resting a firm hand on Charlie's shoulder. Or what if they connect deeply with our story? Charlie's breath caught, the stirring of hope battling against fear. Could they face the world together, armed only with their artistry and the strength they'd begun to cultivate? Charlie looked at the sculpture, at the blend of their vulnerabilities and strengths. A new question emerged, compelling and sharp. Would this piece spark understanding, or would it serve as a raw exposure of their most profound fears? The anticipation buzzed like static in the air. The unveiling awaited, just around the corner, promising to challenge everything they had begun to learn about themselves and each other. The morning light broke over the workshop, illuminating the sculpture with newfound clarity. Charlie stood before it, uncertainty seeping into his thoughts. Each glance at the artwork, a collage of color and texture, brought with it an unrelenting rush of doubt. It was more than just a sculpture. It was a testament to his fears, and today it would be exposed to the critical eyes of their friends. Marcus moved about the space, gathering snacks and preparing for the guests. Charlie could feel the vibrations of anxiety rippling through him, causing tension to coil tighter with every second. "Do you think they'll really understand what we're trying to say?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Marcus paused, wiping his hands on a rag. "Understanding takes many forms, and not everyone will see things our way. But that doesn't invalidate our intentions." Charlie chewed on those words. Marcus's confidence was magnetic, yet Charlie still wrestled with his intrinsic fear of visibility. To create was one thing, but to make their vulnerabilities public felt like stepping onto a precipice. As the clock ticked closer to their friend's arrival, anticipation mixed with dread. Would they find beauty in the amalgamation of Charlie and Marcus's inner struggles, or would they merely pick apart the pieces, dissecting what they deemed flawed? When the doorbell rang, Charlie felt his heart race. Guests filtered in, laughter and chatter encapsulating the heavy air that clung to Charlie. He observed their faces, searching for signs of judgment or misunderstanding as they circled the sculpture. Their reactions, ranging from curious to bewildered, kept him on edge. "Wow, this is amazing. What's it made of?" a friend asked, running a hand over the textured clay surface. "It represents our fears and how they intertwine," Marcus replied boldly, gesturing to the distinct sections of the sculpture. "Each piece speaks to our vulnerabilities and hopes." As conversations flowed, Charlie hung back, torn between pride for the work and a seeping dread that loomed overhead. A close friend leaned in, her brow furrowed as she studied the piece more intently. "I'm not sure I get it. It feels disjointed, like it lacks cohesion," she mused casually, and Charlie felt the jolt of her words slice through him. He fought against the immediate swell of disappointment. "That's the point," he managed to say, his voice stronger than he felt. "It mirrors how fear can fragment our experience, but when we embrace those pieces, they start to create something larger." Her expression softened slightly, but Charlie felt the room's energy shift. Discussions began to veer into topics beyond the art, cutting into deeper conversations of personal experiences and connections, and he found himself longing for engagement. It ignited a small ember of courage buried deep within him, urging him to step forward. "Everyone has their own version of fear," he said, finally taking the plunge. "These are ours, but that doesn't mean they're alien to you. We all carry ours." "Burdens," a friend nodded. "You're right. Art is subjective. I guess I need to think about it more, like I'm looking into a mirror." The dynamics of the conversation began to change, moving from critique to personal reflections. Charlie could feel himself being drawn in, his voice emerging from the quiet recesses of his mind. As stories unfurled, bonds seemed to strengthen, sewing threads connecting their vulnerabilities together. This was a turning point for him, a pivotal moment that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. He realized that pushing through his social fears allowed light to shine in dark corners of his psyche he had kept hidden for far too long. As the gathering wound down, Charlie felt a new determination surging within him. He was more than just an observer in the creative process. He was a vital contributor to a narrative that resonated deeply. Yet, as the last friend departed, uncertainty still lingered. Marcus turned to Charlie, a grin lighting up his face. "You were incredible tonight. You shared your voice with them." Charlie's heart swelled at the acknowledgement, yet a new challenge emerged in his mind. What if this was just the beginning? What if they could take this further, explore avenues beyond the walls of the workshop? "Marcus," he said, the question swirling like smoke in his mind. "What if we shared this on a bigger stage? What if we challenged more people to confront their fears?" The spark in Marcus's eyes exploded with enthusiasm, but in the depths of Charlie's heart, another fear began to rise. Could they really take this leap into uncharted territory?
The moment of truth was approaching, straining against the horizon of possibility. The days that followed the gathering felt transformative, yet unsettling for Charlie. The conversations that had occurred seemed to reverberate in his mind long after the laughter faded. Each morning brought renewed questions about his identity as an artist and his capacity to share his work with the world, teasing him with possibilities that once felt unfathomable. He found himself returning to the workshop every day, not merely to create, but to grapple with what it meant to reveal his truth. The sculpture loomed before him like a silent sentinel, urging Charlie to confront the very essence of his fears. What if he let others see beyond the surface? What if the work they had crafted together could evoke a deeper understanding of fear and vulnerability across a wider audience? One afternoon, as Charlie shaped the clay with intent, Marcus entered the room, his animated energy crackling in the air. "I've been thinking about your idea. There's a local gallery looking for emerging artists to showcase innovative pieces. We should submit our sculpture." The thought crashed over Charlie like a tide. The gallery could bring not just exposure, but a platform, a real chance to engage with people who might resonate with their story. Yet the very thought of being scrutinized by an unknown audience twisted knots in his stomach.
"What if they don't get it?" he voiced, his fingers pausing in their movements. Marcus, ever steadfast, stepped closer. "Charlie, remember that night? How we connected with our friends? This is just another step in that direction. Our fears are not just ours. Let them in." The conviction in Marcus's voice stirred something within Charlie, a flicker of courage that ignited a swell of determination. Perhaps this leap was what he needed, a clear challenge to face his fears directly. He thought about how much stronger he felt after offering his perspective, and how that spark had transformed into a burning flame of ambition. "All right," Charlie said, his voice steadying. "Let's do it." As they prepared the submission, Charlie dove into the details, meticulously crafting an artist statement that articulated not only their vision, but also their journey. The act of writing became both cathartic and revealing, coaxing him to reflect on the artistic path that had led to this moment. He penned about fear as a universal experience, framing it as an invitation for others to explore their own insecurities alongside them. Yet, as the deadline approached, doubts seeped back in. What would happen when critics dissected his work? The self-imposed pressure clawed at him, threatening to stifle his creative spirit. Late one night, after battling with his thoughts, he sat in front of the sculpture, illuminated under a soft lamp's glow. In that quiet moment, Charlie made a decision. He wouldn't allow fear to govern his choices any longer. Instead, he would let hope and vulnerability guide him. Fueled by this realization, they submitted the application, a significant step towards amplifying their voices. But even as he pressed send, an exhilarating tension coiled within him. He was terrified yet exhilarated, standing at the precipice of this new chapter. The days ahead passed slowly, each moment filled with anticipation. Then, unexpectedly, an email arrived. The gallery's response glowed on the screen, and as he hovered over the words, he felt the weight of possibility settle around him. As he opened the message, breath catching in his throat, his heart raced. Would this be the moment that changed everything? This was more than an exhibition. It was a journey into the unknown, one that demanded not only courage, but also honesty, from himself and from those who would witness it. And there, at the point of revelation, another question will surface swiftly. Could he truly embrace the outcome, whatever it might be? The answer hung like paint, mixed, waiting to be applied, on an empty canvas, ripe with potential. The air in the gallery buzzed with the anticipation of a crowd. Charlie stood behind their sculpture, heart pounding like an unsteady metronome, each tick reminding him of the stakes. This was not just a showcase of art. It was a public unveiling of everything he had worked through in his journey,
a narrative of vulnerability and growth that blurred the lines between past fears and future aspirations. As patrons streamed in, their eyes were drawn to the sculpture, a striking blend of textures and colors, each part reflecting a facet of his and Marcus's shared experiences. Charlie felt an adrenaline rush. He had poured his soul into this creation, and now he was ready for it to speak for him. Loud conversations echoed in the gallery, layering over the soft lighting and the reverent hush that occasionally swept through the crowd as they contemplated the artwork. Charlie and Marcus exchanged glances, a silent confirmation passing between them. They were in this moment together, ready to face whatever came next. "Isn't it beautiful?" Marcus said, his voice low and filled with pride. "You've captured everything we aimed to express." Charlie felt the warmth of his words settle into his chest, a solid confirmation of their bond. The judgment of others no longer loomed large. It had been replaced by the sheer power of sharing their truth. As people gathered closer, Charlie took a deep breath and stepped forward, channeling everything he had discovered about himself over these past years. "Thank you for being here," he began, his voice steady, finally loud enough to carry over the hum of discussion. The crowd turned to him, curiosity sparkling in their eyes. "This sculpture represents not just my journey, but ours," he continued, gesturing to Marcus beside him, who nodded with encouragement. "Each piece tells a story of fear and hope, and I believe that treating our fears as part of our art allows us to embrace them rather than be defined by them." The audience was captivated. Charlie could see it in their expressions. Conversations fell silent, each person leaning in as he spoke. A hand raised in the back, and a woman asked, "What inspired the use of different materials?" "It's about embracing disunity to create beauty. Our experiences aren't always neat or cohesive. They're often fragmented," Charlie explained. "But when we allow those parts to inform our narratives, we can forge something greater from them." As he spoke, he felt something shift within himself. The silence of his past no longer haunted him. It had transformed into a powerful tool of communication. For the first time, he was not only sharing his art, but also advocating for acceptance of imperfections. Voices of doubt faded, leaving behind a fervent belief in the value of honesty and collaboration. People began to share their own stories, threads of personal struggles woven into their interactions. The room felt electric, a sanctuary of shared vulnerability. As he moved through the crowd, he made eye contact, saw the reflection of his journey mirrored in their faces, and knew for the first time he was truly being understood. Later that evening, as conversations swirled around him, Marcus turned to Charlie, his expression warm with admiration. "You did it, Charlie. You conquered that silence." A swell of pride surged through Charlie. In that moment, he recognized his transformation. The boy bound by silence had found his voice, not just for himself, but for those around him who echoed similar struggles. He understood now that his journey was not solely about personal achievement. It was also about connecting, sharing, and expanding the narrative. By embracing his fears and vulnerabilities, he had not only melded them into art, but had also woven a tapestry of resilience and growth that resonated with everyone in the room. It was a concrete achievement. He had carved a place for himself, not just as an artist, but as a voice of authenticity in a world filled with noise. And as the evening wound down, he realized the urgency within himself. This was just the beginning of a new chapter in his life, a life where he would continue to confront the challenges ahead, and where every experience could shape him into a better version of who he aspired to be. A strong sense of fulfillment enveloped him, and he felt ready to explore even greater challenges ahead. He wasn't just the silent boy anymore. He had become a man of purpose and conviction, ready to share his new journey with the world. This was the moment to step into the light, and he would never look back. Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It really makes a difference.
Comment your reactions and theories about this ending. We want to hear from you. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Supporting these personal overcoming stories is vital to their continuation.